excited about at GPUG Summit. So why don't you go ahead and take it away.
All right, very good. Well, before we go into GP, we're going to look at a few things on the slides, but we're going to toggle today back and forth between some things that I actually just want to talk about and then some things I actually want to show you. And so, and of course, that's at my discretion on the things that I thought were really super cool. I'm going to show you things that I think are worth mentioning. We're just going to do that. And so, but that's just my opinion, so you might think otherwise, but hopefully there'll be something today for everyone that's on the call. The first thing I put up that I'm always reminded of when I go to an event that's centered around Microsoft Dynamics is where's Dynamics GP going? And so I want to just spend just a minute on the roadmap. Of course, a lot of this product on the left over to the center area of the slide has already shipped. So GP 2016 R2 released last week, and so that actually is out now, and so we're on the kind of the second release of 2016 that came out with the year-end update for 2016. And so if you're not on 2016 already, you're going to see some things in the next couple of minutes that have been added in 2015, 2015 R2, 2016, and then more recently 2016 R2 as far as new features and things that are really designed to be productivity enhancements to the software. And so Microsoft is spending a lot more time and dollars of their research and development budget on adding features that come from existing customers and end users. And so you know, they do always have a few things that they like to put in, just things that haven't made it that for one reason or another slid into a future release. They try to catch those things up and get those into the product, but about 90% or more of what's going into GP from this point forward is really going to come from us. So from you folks that use it every day and from us as partners. If you let us know of a feature that you really have a high level of passion about them getting into it, let us know, let Kim or your account manager or your account executive know. We can tell 1,000 other customers and have them vote for it, and then we might come back to you and say, hey, we've got a handful of customers that really would like to see this feature. Would you go vote on it and say, yes, me too? And not that we are proposing that we can control what goes into the product, but we actually can. And so if we're smart about it. And so 2016 R2 is out. The next release has a name already called GP 2018. Most of us probably could have bet on that and been correct. That will come out about a year from now, very late 2017, probably along this time of doing year-end updates, is my guess is 2017 or 2018 will be a shipping product. And so you'll notice that the features that are going into 2018 are really the top features requested by customers and by end users. And so, of course, they'll always enhance it for new versions of Windows and SQL Server and the technology that's shipping from the rest of Microsoft. And so that will always be on the roadmap. And then subsequent to 2018, so late calendar 2018, so subsequent to GP 2018, the names of the product and the years start to get a little bit confusing here, but in the fall or kind of this time of year in 2018, we'll have GP probably 2019. And so, and again, it's going to be predominantly built based on what customers say we still need to have in the software. So I just wanted to make sure everyone is aware that there's a nice roadmap here for us. We've got lots of new things coming. We just have to together, collectively, with customers and partners alike, tell Microsoft what it is that we want to see in the future versions of the product. And Kim, probably at some point we should put that in the newsletter or something now that I'm bringing it up on how to, quote, vote for these features, is maybe even do a webinar on the Connect functionality if we haven't done that in the last year or so.
I love that. Yep.
Yeah, so talk myself into it there.
All right.
Okay, so to get started, these are this one actually is a new feature, brand new feature in GP 2016 R2, and I wasn't reminded of this at Summit, but it was shown and it was like, oh my goodness, this is 25 years overdue. So occasionally you have a process that you're doing in GP and you'll get the proverbial message, this batch is being edited by another user. Well, they finally, and this is so common sense now that it's so logical, and as I told our internal team, this probably took them 5 or 10 minutes to actually code this, but they're inserting the user's name into the error message. Instead of the batch being edited by another user, and we don't know who the other user is, they're putting the user's name in there. So again, just kind of like common sense. It's like, oh yeah, we could have done that a long time ago. And if you think about it, if you've got 3 users and they're all in kind of the office sitting close to each other, pretty easy to figure out who might have a batch open. But if you've got 100 users and they're spread between 7 different locations across the country, not quite so easy without going to the database to see who might have a batch that's sitting there and you can't deal with it because somebody has it open. So just a simple thing, but really a huge time saver when you have a batch that you're trying to post or get ready for posting and somebody's sitting there with it open and maybe gone to lunch or left for the day and just happen to leave their batch window open. The other item that is also a 2016 R2 feature that is now available, when you are in the journal entry screen, and we'll find that that's true in sales transaction entry and payables transaction entry as well. But this is the general journal entry screen. When you're in that window, as an option, you can have the scrolling part of the window, the grid as we call it, where the account distributions are. That can actually be expanded every time you go into the journal entry screen. And so, as most of you know, Microsoft keeps that condensed up to this point. So we can save real estate, we can save screen space if we want. Some people don't want to save space. We all have very large monitors now, it seems like, and so we're not trying to fit the entire system on a 14 or 15-inch monochrome screen anymore. We've got these television size displays, a lot of us, and so as an option by user, you can have the window expand when you open the screen so that you see, like the snapshot of my window here, you see that it is open. It might have been more helpful to actually have a transaction in there instead of a blank window, but you see the 3 lines of the heading part of the distribution area will all show up. And that is true in, as I said a minute ago, in sales transaction entry and in payables transaction entry. So you won't have to click on the expansion button if you so choose. And so again, a couple of simple things, but they do make a lot of sense once we see them. You know, if you constantly go into the distribution button in journal entry, it's open automatically, but in sales transaction or payables transaction entry, if you spend a lot of time in those screens and you're constantly expanding the account distribution area, this is helpful. That will save you from dragging the mouse over and clicking on that expansion button way over to the right. So very helpful yet simple features. This is one that I knew about, but really don't think about a lot, and this is in Excel, and so we're going to flip over to the software here in just a second. But Excel, especially Excel 2013, 2016, even 2010, had the ability to put a trend line on data. And so if we were to create a graph or chart in Excel, and of course I have Dynamics GP data here, but this could be true even if our Excel spreadsheet has nothing to do with our Dynamics GP data, if it's just stuff we keyed in. Excel has the ability to look at the data and analyze it, and based on the data points that we have in the chart, to actually project out for us, that's the trend line you see here, the dotted blue line, will project where the trend of the data points might be going. And so I tend to forget about that Excel actually has some intelligence built into it. And so the graph that you were seeing there was one that is in my GP system. And just as a side note, we actually built this graph, this dashboard, if you will, a couple of weeks ago in one of our Let's Learn Live sessions. And so when I saved it inside of the folder that GP looks at. And so as an option then, as a GP user, I can actually get to this Excel spreadsheet from within GP. And that's true with any Excel file. If you save it inside your GP folder, where Microsoft has pointed Dynamics GP to look for Excel files, you can access that file, whatever it is, even if it's not GP data, you can access that file from within GP. And so if I tick this one off and click View, that's going to open on my other screen. So this is the dashboard that we created a couple of weeks ago in one of the Let's Learn Live sessions. And the last thing we did was to actually have Excel use some of its built-in intelligence to add this trend line. And so you'll see I've got my customers over here, and if I select one, Excel actually looks at the data and it decides where things are headed, and so forecast, if you will, trends, and gives us kind of a snapshot there of, you know, if things continue on as they are, which, okay, maybe they don't, but if they did, this is kind of where you're headed. In this case, I have customer and sales information by year, and could break that down by quarter. And so, you know, this tells me if I'm the sales manager or the CEO, this is kind of what we could expect out of this customer, all things being equal. If I toggle over to, you know, one where we had a big spike in the data points, assuming that continues, then that trend is really kind of the way we like to see it. You'll notice on Aaron Fitz, though, you might wonder, well, why is this trend line not way up at the top here? And actually, because 2017 is lower than 2016, you could argue, well, the trend really is coming down, not kind of slightly rising. Well, when you add a trend line in Excel, and so you say, well, okay, how do we do that? And when I highlight the graph here, or the table, and I go into Design, and then I go into Add a Chart Element, you'll see I have trend line here, and I can pick any number of trend lines. And so Excel has a couple of different options for us, and there's rules or assumptions built into each one of these. And so linear, for example, will be the raw data, and it'll go the direction the data is going. When it looks at linear forecast, it actually is using more of an expected trend instead of the real trend. And so, and we could see that here with Aaron Fitz, where the real trend would be we're sloping down, but when it looks at the data and says, well, everything I know here, and I've got data in here from a couple of years earlier that just I didn't put on the graph, but when it looks at that, all of that data that's in my Dynamics GP system, in this case, it's saying, well, yes, there were a couple of spikes here in 2016 and 2017, but those are really kind of exceptions. Those are well, exceptions, sorry, just getting over a cold, and so my voice is not quite as functional as usual here. The trend then would look at the averages instead of the spikes or the dips. And you'll notice I've got a little bit of a dip in 2018 with some data, and it's almost ignoring that, saying, well, yes, but that's January, and so we can't really forecast based on 1 month out of 12. And so so it's kind of nice to be able to get Excel to do some thinking for you, and again, not to derail the conversation into Excel, which I'm not an Excel guru at all, but I thought that was kind of worth pointing out. So we do have the ability to not only connect Excel to our GP data anytime we like, but also be able to get Excel to do some real logical thinking of, hey, what's this data really mean? And so that's something that I have to remind myself a lot, is we can do more with Excel than what we are. Okay, so another key topic is if you use Safe Pay, what the banks would call positive pay. Safe Pay up until now would actually, when it created the Safe Pay or the positive pay file, would take the check name to put into the file of checks that we write, and it would take that off the vendor card. And so you see my check name on the vendor card here is Ace Travel, but in Dynamics GP we have the ability to override the check name when we actually enter the voucher, when we enter the transaction, and set it up for payment. And for whatever reason, if the check needs a different name at that point, we don't want to make it a permanent change, but we do want to have that check have a slightly different name. We can do that. Well, the Safe Pay file was actually going back to the vendor card and pulling the check name from the card, which was okay unless we overrode that name for this particular voucher or this payables entry, and then we had a mismatch between what was really on the check and what was in the Safe Pay file. And some banks would catch that, some would not, but more and more we're starting to catch that and putting that out as a possible exception. And so what Microsoft did is said, we're going to actually look at the check name that you used when you entered the voucher and put that in the Safe Pay file regardless of what's on the vendor card. So again, kind of logical and a more of a fix to the code than a feature, but kind of a nice thing if you're using Safe Pay. Here we have Smart List favorites that we've been able to do for many versions, but in larger deployments of the software, inevitably sometime during the year somebody would overwrite my favorite, and they'd open it, they'd run it, they'd make changes and resave it with the same name, and then I'd go to use it. Well, my favorite's no longer my favorite, it's your favorite. And so what Microsoft did, you'll notice way down at the bottom of the window there, the Smart List options, they actually set this up to actually put a password now on the favorite. So if you create a favorite and you don't want anybody to fool with it, you do want them to be able to run it, so you make it available to them, but you put a password on it so no one can actually edit the favorite. They can't save it and overwrite what you've done. They could create their own from yours and save their own, but they couldn't overwrite yours. And so kind of a nice feature that a lot of people, I think, were looking to have something done there. This is a simple one. If you do use Smart List Designer, which is the Microsoft version of Smart List Builder. Of course, Smart List Builder is a third-party product, which a lot of people have, but a couple of versions ago, Microsoft, they basically built their own Smart List Builder, called it Smart List Designer. Those designer smart lists were never available in your advanced lookups or your advanced finds, and so they finally connected those two together. So you'll notice here, if you're doing a lookup on customers, you'll see this is the familiar screen where you go into look to find a customer ID somewhere. You never had access to a Smart List Designer report or favorite. You do now, and so hopefully will allow more people to use SmartList Designer if you don't own SmartList Builder. This is, I realize not everybody uses the Dynamics GP system for payroll, but if there's anyone out there on the call today that does, this is kind of a big one. You now have the ability to print a W-2 directly out of GP that puts lines on the paper, and so this has never been in the system for since 1981 when Dynamics Great Plains Accounting or Great Plains Software was released. This was never an option, and so this is a pretty big deal, and I thought it's such a big deal I'll show you what it looks like. And again, I realize not everybody uses payroll, but it's very simple to do. And so we'll just do it the old-fashioned way here and go into our routines and payroll, where we would normally do the year-end process. And if I go into print my W-2s, and of course I've already created a wage file, and I select the actual W-2 form, a new form type now shows up called one wide, forms with box. And when we print that and send that out to the screen, we'll actually get a nice imaged form. Now, it is kind of meant to be copy one, so to speak, but there's nothing saying that, you know, you could not use this to hand out to the employee even as their copy B or copy C or D or whatever it is you end up giving them. I know if you buy the IRS forms, you have all those various copies, but I don't know of any law that says you have to use those copies. In particular, you do have to send copy A to the Social Security Administration, whether it's electronic or in paper form. So the pink and white form, so to speak, if you're doing paper, that's really the one that's important. The rest are kind of generally up to us. And so, you know, there's no rearranging or trying to get this to line up and so on, because we're making the form as we load the data. And so that's a very nice thing if you have payroll. If you don't, you won't appreciate it, but if you're considering payroll, know now that we can actually do the real W-2 form. And if we're electronic filing with the IRS or Social Security Administration on W-2s, then we really don't need to buy any forms at all. And so, and of course, just as a side note, we've always been able to print the 1095, so if we're doing the Affordable Care Act reporting, we have always had that form, and I don't actually even have any data in there, so, which I knew when I clicked on it. But Microsoft built that one from scratch to have the lines on it. And so that's kind of a very nice thing, a little bit, again, kind of long overdue type thing. Also kind of in the human resource area, and I know a lot of people had to turn on the HR module to be able to do their Affordable Care Act reporting to issue the 1095s last year. And so you might have never used human resources, and even if you don't process payroll through GP, you do have the option of turning on and using the HR module without payroll. But there is a feature now in HR that allows you to track when people come and go. And so if you have used GP's payroll or HR up to this point, you know that someone can leave, and if they come back, you can have an adjusted hire date. You really didn't have much control over maintaining the history of when people came to work and then maybe took extended time off or maybe outright quit and came back a few months or a few years later. You really didn't have a lot of options as to keeping track of when people were coming and going. And so that's something brand new, and again, kind of a very nice feature. And so again, we'll quickly look at that. It is driven off the employee maintenance card, And so I think I've got my very last employee here set up. And so there's a new option here under the payroll system called Employment History. And you'll see as I bring up this person, I've got a number of kind of ins and outs where this person has been with us, left on a temporary duty assignment of some sort on the 15th of January this year, and then they became active again at the end of the prior year. On June 30th of 16, they actually kind of went to our parent company to work, and then they got reactivated here again at the end of June. So again, kind of some mishmash on the dates, but the idea is that we're tracking all of that coming and going now as history for you. And so again, if you don't use payroll or HR, that's kind of a snoozer, but if you do, those are very nice things to have added to the system. Okay, the GP all-in-one viewers, these got added over the last couple of versions, and you know, if you've been using the software for a while, so some people have been using it 20 years, you tend, like most of us, to not necessarily dig into some of the new features sometimes, and our human nature is we continue to do the same thing in the system that we learned 10, 20 years ago. This is one area that I would encourage you, if you're on GP 2015 or later, to actually go in and spend some time with. And so we have these in sales inquiry, inventory inquiry, and purchasing inquiry now. And so these are very powerful components to the system. And so, well, how's this work? And so let's just start with inventory, and again, I'll kind of navigate here the old-fashioned way. You'll notice that under the inquiry option for inventory, I've got an all-in-one view, and what this is doing is bringing everything together for a particular product or item that I have set up. So if I pick my wire 100, I happen to know I had some detail there, and so we see now I've got my quantity coming in, my quantity moving out, if there is any, and I have a couple here, and if there are any adjustments, so maybe from a physical count, we have that middle column filled out. If we did a stock count and had some discrepancies, or we found some that we didn't know we had and we added them to the system, I'd have data in that middle column. But you know, if I wanted to take a look, and so you say, well, what's the big deal? So I'm seeing it here all in one screen. Well, the big deal is if I click on any of these transactions and say, well, what receipt in this case, or what transfer in might have been linked to this transaction. And so I can see here that I've got some negatives, so 35, so it looks like I'm adjusting these out, and you'll notice the module that it's coming from, which is inventory, IV. You'll notice the module over here under my receipt is coming from purchase order processing. And so what this tells the user is this transaction is actually hooked back to this particular receipt. And so you'll notice that these are both numbered transaction 110, and so if I drill down on the transaction, of course that's just like any drill back in the system, it takes me back to the source of the data. But you'll notice here that I had 70 that actually, you know, it looks like I lost. So I've got a shortage here, maybe I did a count or whatever, and I can't locate 70 of these, and so I went in and entered a decrease adjustment here for the 70. Well, inventory is a little bit special in that the system is keeping track of the layers of product that we have available to sell, or in this case to lose. And so why do we have two 35s here? And so good question when the transaction was for 70. And so if we go back and look at the receipt, we see that we have different layers here. And so this layer of inventory came in at 5 cents a foot, where I might have had stock already in the system at a different price. And so when I pull 70 out saying I lost these 70, Dynamics, as you know if you work with the inventory system, is costing this out at a different price. And so you'll see that the cost for some of this at least was at a penny, where my most recent receipt was at a nickel. And so let me move over to sales. It will probably be a little bit more beneficial to see how this really works. So let's suppose that we're doing some research on customer information, and you know the old favorite here is the customer inquiry. So if we just open the receivables or the customer inquiry here and we bring up a customer, we'll grab one that has some detail. So lots and lots of transactions here, and of course in your system you might have 100 times more than what I do, or even more than that. And so this was a good place to kind of see everything, but a little bit cumbersome when you're trying to see, well, you know, what paid which document. So I can see here this is history, and so you know I could go look at the document, okay, and I could click on apply, and I could see the payment, and then I can drill down on the payment. And so I did have that, but you know that's a few mouse clicks to get there. Of course, I could go directly to the payment information here, and then just with a little fewer clicks still get down to the payment. But there's no real way looking at this to see which payments were hooked to which invoices that I sent out to this customer. And if I got down into the payment section here down at the bottom, it was pretty difficult to see which payment actually paid which invoice without drilling back into a lot of detail. And so yes, I could highlight and go back, but you know if I'm looking, and this is years down the road, I've got to do this and pretty much highlight everyone and click back, and no, that's not it, and oh, maybe that's it. And so you could get it done, but it was cumbersome at best. And so the new all-in-one view now allows us, and so this is the sales viewer, allows us to look at the same data, and so we'll pick the exact same customer, and I see all of that now in a little bit different format, and so nicely segregated into quotes if I desire, orders, back orders, invoices, receipts, any credits, any other charges, debit memos, credit memos, finance charges, and so forth, all kind of in one level playing field, so to speak. And so the power of this, though, is if I say, well, I wonder this payment, let's say payment 240, what did that actually pay? So with one click, when I select payment 240, I see the invoice, in this case just one, that was actually paid with the customer's payment on 4/26, and I see that this invoice actually came from this order. And so they're all kind of tied together. Microsoft just kind of invented a better way to actually view the data, and that's why they call it an all-in-one view. We do the exact same thing in payables or in purchasing. But you might say, well, you know, I don't use quotes, and maybe I don't even use orders, so that's fine. You have the option up here to clean this up. And so if you say, I don't want to see quotes or orders or back orders because we don't use those in our company, fine, turn those off the screen, and you can kind of redefine your own view of the data. And so I'm going to put those back on because I do use those. And so from here, of course, I can still drill down just like I could from any other inquiry window. And if we prove this out, let's go back here, and if I click on apply, we see that this payment actually did pay invoice 2219, and so 2219 actually came from order 2217, so we can prove that out. There's our invoice, and if we look at the document history, we see that this invoice was actually created from order 2217, so there's my hook there. And again, we're not delivering any new data, we're just changing up how the data is viewed and allow you to kind of slice it and dice it in a little bit more efficient manner. And so Other things we can do here, we can search. So if I wanted to include my historical orders and invoices and back orders and cash receipts and so forth, I can have the system look at history. I can sort here, so I kind of have the same filters and sorts that I would in SmartList. And so if I say this invoice begins with 1, 2, 3, 4 or something, or I might go to a date, for example. I might go to a customer PO number. I might go to any number of options here. So this is really designed to really increase efficiency around looking at sales information, purchasing information, and inventory item information. And so these are the people that use these. They're very popular. People love them. We just have to make sure everybody knows that you do have access to these now if you're in a more recent version of the software. And so I have to remind myself that those windows are out there. Okay, so that's what the all-in-one views are. The last one that I thought was probably of significant value, but way underutilized, is the GP Time Management app. And so Microsoft released this with GP 2015 R2, so has not been around an awful long time, but if this is something that's useful and you're not on at least 2015 R2, this might be a reason to kind of consider moving up a version or two if you're not current. But the beauty of this app is it's an app like you're thinking it is. It works on any Microsoft device. It works on any Apple device, so iPad, iPhone, whatever, any Android phone or tablet. And the idea of the app is to allow salaried people, for the most part, although you could use it for anyone, the beauty of it really, in my mind, is salaried people can go in and enter their paid time off, so sick time, vacation time, and we use the workflow that's in GP to route those for approval. So if you have a person that's on salary that wants to take time off and you want to use the workflow, you don't have to. You could just allow them to track it. But the beauty is, this can route to somebody and they can say yay or nay. And so I can go in and put a request for time off onto my calendar, literally, and that will route to the appropriate person above me that does the approval of my time off request, and then on into Dynamics GP, into the HR system. If we're tracking time off in GP, then that'll go in and update my my account, my bank, so to speak. And so let's flip back over to GP here. Actually, I'm not going to do it in GP because this is an app, and so I'm going to just load this from my desktop, and that's over on my other screen, but give me just a second, and here it is. And so here's the time management app, and again, this you can go get from your store today. So if you're on an iPhone, before this call ends, you could actually go download this app. Of course, it's free, just like most of the apps that are sitting out there for Dynamics. Android, Windows 10 device. So if you have a Windows 10 phone, which we should do another poll, Kim, on the mobile technology, but I'll bet no one has a Windows 10 phone here except maybe me. But I am running Windows 10 on my laptop, and so the app works fine. And so this is the calendar. It's not my Outlook calendar. This is a separate system, completely different from Outlook. But you'll see here I've got my vacation bank showing. I've got my sick bank showing, and I actually, in my company, have a floating holiday bank, and so whatever that might be, sounds like just an extra couple of days off, possibly. I can see my saved time cards, and you'll notice the submit button and the delete button here. So as I submit that's when the workflow kicks in and allows the user here to send it on to their manager for approval, and I can look at my historical time card. So if I need to look back at something or call a time card back up, I could do that. Of course, if it's already updated the bank and approved, I can't change it once it's approved, but you'll notice the submitted here have not been approved, so those could be recalled and changed. But I can see what was on the calendar. So October 15th, I had basically a day of vacation, so I used 8 hours of vacation, and then on the 17th I used a half a day of sick time. And so, you know, if I'm going to be taking tomorrow off, I can simply come in here and right click, and if I want 8 hours of vacation, I can add that on. And well, if I'm taking Thursday off, you know, well, I come in on Friday, I'm out of vacation, but I got a sneaky feeling I'm not going to make it in here on Friday, so I'm going to put in for 8 hours sick time. So, and hopefully you don't have people scheduling sick time in advance, although, well, we'll leave it at that. But, you know, if you do have that policy where people can take a sick day and don't have to be sick and kind of supplement their vacation, so be it. But typically sick time would be done, you know, after the fact. So so I can kind of stick those things right on the calendar like that. And of course, if I come in and say, well, you know, I'm not gonna try to do that, so I'm just gonna delete that request for the 8 hours on Friday off. So we'll see what happens when Friday gets here. And you might be wondering, well, if I've got multiple companies and people work in different companies, that's fine. I can go up to the top here and bring up the taskbar, and you'll see I actually have 3 separate companies here, and so I can toggle over to any of the companies. Now, I don't have any real data in some of these other ones, so I'm not going to get anything different, but no limit. I mean, this will read your Dynamics GP companies, so if you had 100 companies, we have 100 choices here if you actually worked in each of the 100 companies. Now, if you have 100 and you only work in 2, then you're only going to see 2 available to you. So again, if you're not, you know, if all this is outsourced and you don't track any kind of PTO in your Dynamics system, then this is kind of cool to look at, but not much value. But if you are tracking time off in the system, even if you don't process payroll and you're using some of the HR functionality to track time off, or if you'd like to track time off, this is a free app. We just have to go get it and hook it to our system. But you can download it immediately, right now, this very minute, and it'll actually run in demo mode, and so you would actually see the data I'm seeing. And so because this is my demo data, it's actually Microsoft's demo data. So if you put the app on your phone or on your tablet, you'll be able to play around with it. Of course, it won't be hooked to your system without you doing that, but you can play around with it and, you know, show it to others and so forth. And you know, if that's something that you want to use and you need help kind of hooking it up to the live system, then just you know, let us know. We can obviously do that. So so Kim, those are the things that I wanted to make sure we got through, just assuming that there might be some questions, or maybe some questions on some things we didn't cover that some people might even want to share one of their favorites if they feel so inclined. So I'll turn it back over to you for the last 5 or 10 minutes here to see if there's anything out there.
Sounds good. Yeah, 2/3 of them were at GPUG Summit, so maybe they do have something. And we're always looking for webinars and topics and speakers that could help us. So if anyone has something that they'd like to share now and or later, love that. There are no questions in the queue right now, so I'm going to give everybody a chance to type in questions they'd like to ask Bryan before we let him go. But wow, I really like this, Bryan. It's just a kind of a hodgepodge of all different things to help folks. It's great.
Yeah, and totally unrelated topics for the most part, and this really, I think, is the first one of these that we've ever done. And so you know, if we were to do one next week, I might come up with different topics based on you know, mood and so forth. But yeah, I mean, hopefully there's something that everybody at least found maybe one thing that got them to thinking that, yeah, maybe I should look into that. So
yeah, it's cool. Very cool. And again, some of these topics we have webinars planned for. So if there's something that, you know what, that's pretty cool, I want to dig in a little bit more, let me know. Just email me user experiences at InterDyn BMI and tell me your thoughts. We're here to make sure that you get the most out of your Dynamics GP.
mhm.
All right, Brian. Well, I guess we're going to let folks go and have an extra 10 minutes to their day. So thank you very much for giving some of the tips that you enjoyed at GPUG Summit. And everybody else,
Absolutely.
make a time to take a look at what's going to happen next year in Nashville. Of course, it's way too early to look at what the sessions are, but it's always a lot of sessions that will help you and your team. And also, as in setting budget, this is timely that you'll want to make sure that you have many people from your company go, because there's rooms specific to payroll, another room, 3 rooms for IT, and another 3 rooms for reporting. So it is a great way for you to get a lot of good education exposure to what's possible. Thank you, Brian, so much, everybody.